Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, everybody. This is Krishna Vadula here um, from IFES. We have this webinar, the exciting webinar that you all been waiting for. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in different parts of the world. It's really exciting to have Dr. Norman Fortenberry give us the webinar today. He is the Executive Director of the American Society of Engineering Education in Washington, D.C., USA, and his topic will be making engineering appealing to the next generation. Just a brief outline of his illustrious background is here. Dr. Norman L. Fortenberry is the Executive Director of American Society of Engineering Education, which many of you already know is a global society of individual, institutional, and corporate members founded way back in 1893. Wow, that's a long time. ASEE advances innovation, excellence, and access at all levels of education for the engineering profession. ASEE is broadly concerned with instruction, research, public service, professional practice, and societal awareness. Previously, Fortenberry served as the founding director of the Center for the Advancement of Scholarship on Engineering Education, CASEE, at the National Academy of Engineering, NAE. He has served in various executive roles at the National Science Foundation. Um, and Fortenberry has also served as Executive Director of the National Consortium for Graduate Degrees for Minorities in Engineering and Science, Inc., the GEM, which is the GEM Consortium, and as a faculty member in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Florida A&M University, which is part of Florida and Florida State University. Dr. Fortenberry is awarded BS, MS, and Doctorate of Science degrees, all in mechanical engineering by the famous Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So with that, I will hand the microphone over to him in just a second. Okay, Norman, all you have to do now is show my screen.
All right, fantastic. All right, so I want to thank you, Krishna, for the very kind introduction and this opportunity to make this presentation. With that, I am going to turn my camera off and go to the screen so that folks can see the presentation slides. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to talk about making
Stay close to the mic, so Norman. You're
well, I've got a headset, so the mic is at a fixed distance, but
okay, that's fine.
I will try to turn toward it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Right, yeah.
Have this pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you about making engineering more attractive, particularly to those in the pre-college. And essentially, this is a discussion about engineering in pre-college through 12th grade or through pre-college education at all levels. The outline, I'm going to speak for approximately 30 minutes, and then have time for questions and answers. I'm going to talk first about ASEE as an organization, a little bit more detail than Krishna gave, talk about some key challenges in engineering education, talk about my background, which is relevant to this topic, or make it relevant, and then some key, I'm sorry, that's a repeat, and then the role of engineering in P12. So, and now my slides won't move. It's interesting. So ASEE, why we exist, as Krishna said, we advance innovation, excellence, and access at all levels of education for the engineering profession. So that's pre-college through lifelong learning. Our objectives at ASEE are framed around these pillars: communities and communication, innovation and excellence, access, diversity and inclusion, advocacy and public policy, financial sustainability, and internal organization. What we do as an organization is we promote excellence, exercise worldwide leadership, foster the technological education of society, provide quality programs, provide a forum for exchanging ideas. And this idea of fostering technological education of society is one that I will drill down on. How do we do what we do? We do it through providing professional development for our members. We have workshops and conferences and seminars, institutes for deans, department chairs, regular line faculty, everyone associated with the education of engineers. We are developing a workshop now for college relations folks on the corporate side. So at ASEE, we want to be the society that provides professional development for everyone who touches the education of an engineering student, whether they in particular are engineers or not. We also engage in research, evaluation, and provision of information. Some of you may be familiar with our profiles books or profiles database, where we provide data within the US on enrollments, graduations, also disaggregating data by gender and ethnicity. And we operate programs for others within the US. Principally, we do this for the federal government. For example, ASEE is the contractor that operates the very prestigious National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. At ASEE, we see the value of studying engineering, and most of us take it as a given, the need for engineering researchers and workers. But in terms of the point that I made earlier, we also see a need for engineering literate citizens, and those are citizens of the world. So how do I personally view engineering? This is a personal view, not necessarily that of my society as a whole, but I believe we need to move to the place where we talk about the engineering professionals. And the engineering professionals includes engineers, engineering technologists, and engineering technicians. This is analogous to medical professionals. That is, while neurosurgeons may not normally socialize or hang out with phlebotomists, the people who take blood at the hospital, they will concede that they are all part of an integrated continuum of medical professionals. And I think we would benefit from taking a similar view in engineering. So, what is engineering? Engineering professionals do systems for the manipulation of stuff, where do encompasses the terms conceive, design, analyze, realize, produce, modify, operate, oversee, maintain, and retire. So we do systems. And what are systems? Products, processes, or services, manipulation, transformation in form, state, or location, and stuff, matter, energy, and or information. So engineering professionals do systems for the manipulation of stuff is my personal definition of engineering, and I believe it incorporates every accepted definition of engineering, and maybe a few definitions that aren't accepted. I'm going to play a video now, and unfortunately, I don't believe you'll be able to pick up the sound, but I will describe it as best I can. The video makes a point that engineers really are concerned with big ideas and big implications, big issues. They make plans that affect history, that make waves, and that these are people who break down barriers, break down problems and illusions across, they change landscapes and economies' minds by bringing to bear their expertise. They study humanity, culture, nature, and they shape, therefore, society and policy and the future, therefore. They see challenges, housing, energy, disabilities, climate, education, clean water, security. They see these challenges as opportunities. And so these are designers, creators, investigators, explorers, problem solvers, change agents, visionaries. But ultimately, they are engineers. And that is why I believe that we need to look at engineering broadly and holistically. So key challenges, therefore, in engineering education include providing authentic learning experiences that cover the breadth of engineering work. And that breadth is part of what we saw in the previous slide in the video. There needs to be a focus, in my view, on mastery and not simply seat time or credit hours. We should really work on having every student graduate with the knowledge that it takes to fully function in their future position. You know, there's an old saying that no one wants to be on the airplane designed by the D student. So we should really work to have all of our students succeed. And the research base in education, engineering education, shows that such mastery is in fact possible. We need to attract diverse thinkers to engineering. Charles Vest, former president of MIT and former president of the National Academy of Engineering, made a point in several presentations that the engineering is increasingly mixing not only with the physical sciences, but also the social sciences. If engineering is about serving humanity and addressing human needs, we cannot do that unless we better understand what human needs are. In an increasingly complex world, that draws us into the social sciences. So engineers need to be able to work with social scientists, and they need to be able to work with those in policy domains, a variety of policy domains. So engineers can't simply focus on the technical, they have to be able to work with others who are expert in non-technical domains. William Wolfe, a faculty member at University of Virginia and also a past president of the National Academy of Engineering, made the point that if we don't have a diverse engineering workforce that draws on all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, then we pay an opportunity cost, a price paid in ideas not thought of and solutions not developed. And so we absolutely positively have to have broad thinking within engineering. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my background and then try to draw some parallels with the broader points that I've made. I'm told, because I wasn't aware of it, that at 3 years old, I declared that I was going to be an in the ear. And my parents interpreted that to mean that I wanted to be an engineer. I had no engineers who were relatives or noticeable role models. Somewhere I got this idea of being an engineer. And I used to play with a very simple mechanical meat grinder. That was my engineering toy. But I also want to make a point about the criticality of having supportive and protective parents. I was engaged in a social protest in the 4th grade. I thought I was making an important point. Uh, my parents were supportive of that activity, but carefully explained to me that there wasn't much I could do if I got expelled in the 4th grade. Can't do much with a 4th grade education. On the other hand, in the 8th grade, well, moving into the 8th grade, I was told that if I performed well in the beginning of 8th grade math, the regular sequence, I could move to the college prep or the high performance math. After 2 months in that math class, the regular track, I said, okay, I'm performing well. I want to move up to the next level math. And the teacher said, well, you're in this class now, you can't move. And so it was very important that my parents were willing to take time off their jobs to go to school to emphasize to that teacher and to the principal that they had made a representation and a commitment to me. And given the quality of my work, I should be able to move up to the next level of math. And I was moved. But that was only because of the intervention of my parents. I think I also want to discuss the influence of geography. So when I was in 11th grade, I was in a very advanced school system that had calculus as part of the high school curriculum. In my senior year, my 12th grade year, we moved to a different school system. My father was in the Army, so we moved around a lot. I moved to a different school system where they didn't have calculus. My math teacher was a very newly graduated college student herself. She handed me her calculus book and said, uh, hey, I can't teach just you by yourself. So here's the book. You can do self-study. Uh, go off and do well. Well, I didn't do well. On the AP, the advanced placement exam, I received a 1, which is the lowest score possible as a self-study student. Had I been at my other school, I would have had much better preparation. In terms of choice of college, Krishna mentioned that I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That was a little bit of serendipity. My original choice had been to go to the same state school as all my other friends had gone. This was in grades 9 through 11, so high school. And so the conversation that was held with me, because I wasn't aware that MIT was that special at the time, is that if you're going out of state anyway, you can go to Massachusetts as easily as you can go to any other state. Finally, students need to understand that what helps in high school is deadly in college. That is, frequently in high school in the U.S., you're taught in high school to study on your own. Looking at old tests is called cheating, etc. But in college, working in groups is essential. Using old problem sets, old exams is assumed by many faculty. And so what works in high school definitely is not good for you in college, in my background. Now, within college, there are sincere choices, but they can have some serious consequences. In my freshman year, there was something I took a calculus, a course labeled calculus for scientists and engineers. And the class was mostly consisted of scientists. Most of the engineering students took the regular calculus track. Because I took a different calculus track, my opportunities for study groups were not as diverse. I didn't have as many people that I could call on in my dorm or in informal study groups to study with. And I paid a price for that in terms of having to study much harder to understand the material and to get through. Similarly, my sophomore year, or no, that was also freshman year, rather than take the regular chemistry sequence, I took chemistry for engineers, which is actually a very good course. But again, there was a smaller population of friends and colleagues to draw upon for study groups and study sessions. So these are choices that students may make without a great deal of thought that can have some serious consequences. But throughout my career in school and in life, there's a critical role of mentorship. For my bachelor's thesis and for graduate school, I had a faculty member take an interest in me and say, would you like to work with me? I think I see some potential in you. And that same faculty member encouraged my attendance at graduate school. We have to make sure that we're looking for potential and talent in all of our students, and not just those who are unquestionably performing at the highest level. Because there's potential talent and there's demonstrated talent, and we need to keep our eyes open for potential talent. And then last point I want to make is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I spent 11 years at the U.S. National Science Foundation as a program officer, then a division director and a senior advisor to the assistant director for education and human resources. That is because of the opportunities that were provided to me in the preparation that I did ahead of time. I went to the National Science Foundation because there was a presentation by an NSF division director who was talking about these are the things that we do in my part of NSF. And I asked lots of questions. And I guess he appreciated the questions because he then offered me the opportunity to become a rotator, one of the younger rotators they had at NSF. And I later left, as Krishna said, to become executive director of the GEM Consortium. And I had an opportunity to go back to NSF when that same division director thought of me as somebody who would come back as a division director because he was moving on an out assignment. So that was opportunity, but I was prepared for those opportunities. Similarly, at the National Academy of Engineering, when I left the National Science Foundation, William Wolf was the president of NAE, and he wanted to start a new center, and that center aligned with my interests and skills. And so he recruited me to National Academy of Engineering to direct that center. And my current position as executive director, a friend noticed that there was this opening, this opportunity to become executive director, which I've now held this position for 8 years. So eight and a half years ago, he noticed this opportunity and made me aware of it. So luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and we need to make sure that we are providing our students both with preparation but also with opportunities. So let me draw some lessons from the background. Awareness and engagement are critical to developing future engineers. Talent may be sidetracked. A lack of preparation is not the same as a lack of talent. And when I use the word talent, I don't mean to imply that only those who have some inherent ability can be engineers. I think engineers can be prepared from a wide array of backgrounds, but preparation is key. Potential talent must be nurtured as intensely as demonstrated talent. I made this point before. And mentorship is critical throughout one's career. No one makes it on their own. People who talk about being self-made, if you press them enough, they had a number of opportunities offered to them by virtue of the location they were in, their background, or connections, personal or professional. So from that, let's now talk about pre-college engineering education. Frequently, we hear the term STEM. I think it's important to remember that STEM is increasingly distinct from engineering. Sometimes, depending upon who you talk to, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, is what it used to stand for, is distinct from each of those 4 individual disciplines. But within that context of some of the more commonly accepted definitions of STEM, it's important to understand that engineering can be used as a context for math and science instruction. There's several NAE reports that engineering can exemplify how I will use this, where this is math or science in the real world. Engineering can also be used as an integrative framework for math science instruction. That is, they'll set up an engineering problem and then focus on the mathematics or the science. But engineering as engineering, the definition, analysis, and solution of real-world human problems is much rarer and something that we at ASEE believes needs to be pursued. To do that, we need to have student awareness of engineering, student engagement in engineering activities. We need to be concerned about the instructors, and that's both in-service education of existing teachers and the preparation of future teachers, pre-service teacher education. We need to align with science frameworks, and so in the US, next generation science standards and the technology education standards. And we see a need for separate and distinct pre-college engineering education standards. I talked about awareness. Awareness can happen in many ways to build awareness and interest in engineering and science among young students. This happens through narrative television shows. There was a show in the US called Scorpion, which had a team of engineers and scientists, including medical professionals. They did make a point of calling them brilliant misfits, which I find regretful, but that's the reality. At least these people were seen on television. There was a show back in the 80s called MacGyver, and a new version of MacGyver that was on television a couple years back, actually last year and the year before, that also highlighted the engineering process. There's a curriculum from the Museum of Science Boston, Engineering is Elementary, and this is another way to build awareness and interest. Age-appropriate, real engineering tasks. Awareness, we need to maintain interest and skills among middle and high school students. There is a specific curriculum for out of school, that's for parents and community-based people, called Family Engineering. ASEE publishes Engineering Go For It, EGFI magazine. And we used to do an annual workshop, K-12 workshop, where we brought together many exemplars who were doing various activities in order to engage teachers in activities that they could incorporate into their classes to highlight engineering activities and demystify it, because many K-12 teachers and many parents are afraid of engineering because they don't understand it. We must target parents and teachers as well as students. Engagement, I offer an example, one that you've seen in IUCEE before in terms of engineering projects and community service. The beautiful thing, or the great thing about EPICS at the collegiate level to me, is that it is part of the formal curriculum, but it is also increasingly being seen at the pre-college level, and it engages all years, high school and college, and provides near-peer mentors with upper level students mentoring younger students. And the research, education research, has shown that this type of near-peer mentoring is particularly successful in helping students to be successful. And it requires a commitment to maintain products and services introduced in previous years. That is, if you are an EPICS student 3 years from now, you may be called upon to engage with an EPICS project from 2 years prior, and that's part of teaching you to be a real engineer. In terms of how we educate teachers, within ASEE, we have promulgated professional development standards. These are available online. We have a standard, and I have these web addresses, and I believe my slides will be available to you after this presentation. Standard A involves engineering content and practices. Standard B, pedagogic content knowledge for teaching engineering. Standard C, engineering as a context for teaching and learning. Standard D, curriculum and assessment development. And Standard E, alignment to research standards and educational practices. We are applying these standards to professional development teams, both at universities and private providers, and we hope in the near future to be recognizing those providers who we believe meet our standards. There's the opportunity to also recognize those providers and developers of educational content, sequences, and materials. ASEE has just announced a project with Advancing Excellence in P12 Engineering Education, which that group has established content and progressions of learning in engineering and is developing a framework for P12 engineering learning, with the goal being P12 engineering education standards. There are a number of current and emerging providers. I mentioned before the Museum of Science in Boston. There's also the UT Austin's You Teach Engineering Your World curriculum and the NSF-funded consortium Engineering for Us All. Some of you may already be aware of Project Lead the Way and ITEEA's Engineering by Design. Those are somewhat controversial, but also good products to build upon. In terms of strategies for improving K-12 engineering instruction, we see engineering and engineering technology examples being used for core math and science, providing real-world applications, engineering and engineering technology as a framework for technology and laboratory activities, and the venues, again, the pre-service and in-service teacher education, having classroom visitors and teacher aides who are engineers or have an engineering background, and in the development of instructional and curricular materials. There are direct and indirect partners. Engineering and engineering technology colleges or departments can have and do have K-12 outreach specialists. There are colleges of education that are either near engineering and engineering technology campuses, part of the same universities, or nearby universities and national associations of teacher colleges who can be partners on activities. There are K-12 math and science societies. Within the U.S., this includes the National Science Teachers Association, National Council of Teachers on Mathematics, the American Association of Physics Teachers, the International Technology and Engineering Educators Association, and others. There are associations of principals, counselors, chief state school officers, that should be principals is misspelled, sorry about that, and advocacy non-governmental associations. In the U.S., this includes Achieve, NIMSI, National Math Science Initiative, etc. And we need to improve K-12 instruction, include sample activities, include materials content revision to incorporate engineering and engineering technology examples, in-service materials content revision, both the pre-service and the in-service materials, and training teachers and or outreach visitors. A number of activities can be done out of school through service organizations like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. There are a number of others, Boys and Girls Clubs, and preschool and after-school activities as well. But I made the point before that engineering is important and has to be made important beyond purely the production of future engineers. We need public understanding. And if for no other reason, we need public understanding because when we want people to invest in the education of future engineers, they have to understand why that's important to them and their lives. And so the strategies include highlighting that everything human-made is engineered. Either currently or at some point in the past, every human-made thing was engineered. We need to showcase the diversity of engineering fields and practitioners and exhibit the value of engineering preparation for non-engineering careers. The thought processes of engineers are immensely valuable for a variety of professions. And these venues, as I've said, are formal K-12 education, higher education, lifelong and informal learning spaces, traditional and social media, public spaces, political, social, and economic policy forums. There are direct and indirect partners with associations of individual institutional educators, individual media companies and their associations. ASEE is engaged in a project with NBC Learns called Engineering Your World, and we have modules featuring several engineers as exemplars and as role models, individual science centers and their associations, the Ad Council within the U.S., corporations and foundations, public and science policy groups. Sample activities, print and electronic ad campaigns highlighting a variety of engineers doing interesting, maybe off-the-wall things, incorporation of engineers into primetime narrative dramas. I made that point early on with Scorpion, the TV show, an ad campaign highlighting CEOs in industry, government, military, non-governmental organizations with engineering backgrounds. I haven't seen one of those, but I think that's an idea. And at the National Academy of Engineering, when I was there, I had an Engineering Education Makes a World of Difference website and phone campaign, that is, short vignettes were sent to telephones highlighting how engineers affect virtually every aspect of modern life. So therefore, we can encourage youth through awareness of and attraction to engineering and engineering technology careers, and providing foundational preparation for success within and graduation from engineering and engineering technology programs of study. Again, formal education, informal education, character and leadership development groups are all places where we can do this. That went the wrong way. Sample activities in terms of encouragement, books, videos, social media highlighting young people explaining what engineering is and how it allows them to change the world. Training of teachers and or outreach visitors, made this point before. Family engineering was one that I mentioned, and iridescent and mind trekkers are two other groups that are merit your investigation. So with that, in terms of encouraging youth, I'd like to,
Great.
we are at 8:30. We've taken up time, and I promised I would save time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Norman, for a very exciting, informative, and stimulating set of slides and your views. That's really great. So we have some time here now for questions, discussions, and I think most of you know how to chat. So please feel free to do that. And if you feel that you have something that you want to say, please send a text message saying that you have something that you want to comment on, and I will unmute you. I put a few people into the panelist column so that if they have some thoughts, I'll just help us stimulate some discussion. So maybe let's see. Let's start with maybe Ramakrishna. Do you want to say and have some comments? Start the discussion, Rama. Or
yeah. Thanks, Norman, for a nice presentation, and also the sharing your personal story. That was quite informative and inspiring. My question relates to the fact that, around the world, I think there may be different sets of challenges and opportunities than what is presented, which I presume is somewhat kind of US-centric, the presentation and the approaches. Because, just as an example, in India, for example, there's like, you have to close the doors to let, before you let people into engineering. There are like, they graduate at like 1 million engineers a year or something like that. So promoting engineering in K-12 to make people interested in engineering or go to engineering is not a big issue there. Perhaps the quality of education, both K-12 as well as in the higher education, may be more of an issue. So I just wanted to comment on what kind of lessons that we can have for kind of when you look at it globally.
So there were several, thank you, Rama, for that comment. There were several studies done in the 80s in Australia, in the US, in India, in Germany, around the globe. There have been studies concerned about, to your point, the quality of engineers in terms of their nature of their preparation. So while there may be, I'm very pleased to hear, strong interest in engineering in India, I think your point, we have to be concerned about what engineering is communicated to be and how we are preparing people for the practice of engineering to make sure that they are at the level of performance that we need for the 21st century. I also suspect that, as we've seen in a number of Western countries, European countries, Japan, that over time, the interest in engineering in India, unless something changes, may go down over time as students see alternative careers as providing more money with less effort. I hope that's not the case, but that has been true across several countries around the globe. And so it's good to, while it's not yet a problem, to anticipate and put in place systems to prevent it from becoming an issue. But I think the core point to your comment is we absolutely need to be concerned about the quality of preparation that's available.
Thanks. That was Ramakrishna from the National Academy of Engineering who made that had the discussion. In fact, Norman, I just got a text message from one of our participants from India saying that in South India, students enrolling in the math, physics, and chemistry part of K through in the 10 to 12th grades is in fact declining in the past 1 or 2 years. So that's what you were kind of saying. It might happen, and that's interesting. that you made that comment earlier. I'm going to get back to some of the comments. I'm going to see if Roger Hadcraft has any comments to make from Australia. Would you like to join us, Roger, or Manivandan from India? Any comments, thoughts? You can unmute yourself and join the discussion. Manivandan, come in, Mani.
Yeah. Are you hearing my voice?
Mani is from IFES and is from India. Go ahead. Yeah.
Krishna, are you getting my voice
Yes.
clear?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Mani.
Thank you, Norman. Wonderful. Your talk is really short and sweet. In fact, here also in India, there are a lot of, especially with respect to engineering education now, a lot of declines with respect to education because of lack of employability. The problem is from your talk, what I understand in the sense, the lack of application of mathematics and science in the context of engineering. It's lacking in our country because the curriculum is not on par with the industry needs. Okay, so especially our India and also the Southeast Asian countries, a lot of difficulties in promoting the education, especially engineering education. In what way you can give your thought process to improve in this context?
So I appreciate the question. If I heard you correctly, I think you made comment both about applications being lacking in terms of applications tied to industrial need. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, and so I think, again, as part of what I believe to be crucial is that we need to provide students at all levels with much more realistic applications as part of the work. It can't simply be a theoretical exercise. We're training, preparing future engineers, and to be worthy of that label, they need to work in a professionalized context, not simply what the equations or the processes are, but how to apply those processes in the real world. And we are seeing experiments in doing that. Some of you may be familiar with Olin College within the U.S., which has taken a very applied approach. I'm sorry, I'm going blank on the name, but Charles Stewart College in Australia formally incorporates industrial practice into their curriculum. There's a college a brand new college in the UK, INMITE, and I don't recall what the acronym disaggregated stands for. I think it's new. I don't remember what it stands for, but anyway, there's a new college in the UK, INMITE, that also incorporates industrial practice as part of the formal curriculum. So I think there are a few places that are moving way beyond co-op to really incorporate industrial practice as part of the engineering curriculum, providing students with hands-on opportunities not only to work with challenging problems, but problems that cross traditional disciplinary boundaries and allow students to begin to really think and act like engineers.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Mani, for that question.
Thank you, Norman. Welcome to India for week 2019. We'll be happy to receive you at Chennai.
I will be there.
Great. Bill from Portugal, you wanted to make a comment or a question? Unmute yourself and jump in.
Right. Thank you, Krishna, and thank you, Norman, for those very interesting pointers you've given us. My point follows a little bit from what Rama was saying earlier, in that of the people participating in this webinar, I know are distributed, all over the world: India, Malaysia, Australia, Europe, etc. And Norman, I think the initiatives you described and the resources that you've mentioned will be useful to all of us anyway. But I was wondering, when you were talking more from the ASEE perspective in the first part of your talk, how would you see ASEE's role outside the US, if you like? To what extent you think, because what happens in the US, what happens in ASEE, what happens in ABET has repercussions, pretty much all over the globe anyway. So I was wondering if you could give us your perspective on what you see as the role of ASEE outside the US for people, Europe, India, Australia, Africa, etc.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question, Bill. ASEE seeks to work collaboratively with partner societies for engineering education around the globe. We have, excuse me, we have memoranda of understanding with a variety of other societies, including the European Society for Engineering Education, Korean Society for Engineering Education, Japanese Society for Engineering Education. I'm missing several. So societies around the world that we work with. So and obviously we all work under the umbrella of the International Federation of Engineering Education Societies. ASEE seeks to be a collaborative partner with other engineering education societies around the globe in advancing the quality and the content of engineering education. On our own accord, and I was just earlier, wait, this is August, in July 10 through 12, I was in Cairo, Egypt at the Association of African Universities. They have a meeting of all the institutional presidents, vice chancellors, rectors, etc. And I was there at their invitation to make a presentation on how ASEE could offer technical assistance to them in curriculum and laboratory development, preparing for various aspects of getting ready for an accreditation visit in terms of making sure that their things were in order. And so one of the things that we are doing where the local societies are not already providing assistance and where they in fact welcome our assistance, and we do work with the African Engineering Education Association as well, is ASEE is gearing up to provide direct technical assistance either at the request of institutions or our partner societies. So we do not want to be seen as intrusive, but if there are others around the world who would welcome our assistance building on our knowledge base or the expertise of our members, we are prepared to offer that assistance as requested. Again, being very careful not to overstep our boundaries or our role.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for the question, and thank you, Norman, for your response. Elsie, I've unmuted you, and then after that, I'll go to some of the questions that have come in, including Aditya Bhatnagar and several from India. Go ahead, come in, Elsie, from New York. I've unmuted you. I know you texted me, so I'm just giving you a chance to speak as well. You having a problem with your microphone, Elsie? Normally you should normally okay. Aditya Bhatnagar, do you want to make your comment yourself? I think you sent a little question. Aditya, go ahead.
Yeah, there are two questions that I had, Norman. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. What do you think of using hands-on activities in K-12 for the E part of STEM? That's the first question. And the second one is the challenge that here in India we face, particularly with first-year engineering students who get very quickly disenchanted because of the amount of theory or things like linear algebra, which they find quite challenging. So how do you handle that?
So thank you very much for the question and the comment. I absolutely believe that there is a very significant and strong role to be played by hands-on education, both in pre-college education and in collegiate education. One of the challenges in the U.S. that we have is that there is almost a separation between those pre-college programs that provide students with extensive hands-on experience, what we might call the technology track, or the used to be called shop, and those experiences that are deemed more college preparatory but are more theoretical. And Where we are slowly moving at the pre-college level is integrating those two tracks, understanding that students bound for college also need hands-on preparation. So in terms of making things real, I absolutely believe there is high value in hands-on. With regard to the collegiate students being disenchanted by overly theoretical courses, this is a challenge that we faced in the US for quite a period of time, and the way we're beginning to make inroads around that are finding ways to push down earlier in the curriculum hands-on activities. A number of US colleges have what they call Intro to Engineering as a first-year student course, and it provides reinforcement to students that the theory that they are learning in their other classes will have application. These first-year Intro to Engineering courses do not involve activities where the theoretical base has to be strong. It's more at getting them to think about problems and to motivate them to say, well, if I knew more about the underlying theory, I would be better prepared to handle this challenge. So it's motivating them to persist in their theory courses, providing context for those theory courses, and encouraging their retention within their enthusiasm for engineering as a career field.
Okay, thank you, Aditya, for the question, and Norman for the answer. Elsie, can you come in? I've unmuted you, otherwise I will read out your comment. Okay, I'll read it out. Elsie Mayo from New York says, impressive array of initiatives, congratulations. How are you measuring success against your goal? How managing the engagement of actors outside academia and such as business and the media? The two questions. One is about measuring success,
Sure.
and the other engaging people outside academia.
Okay, two separate questions. All right. So with regard to measuring success, that's part of why ASEE at the pre-college level is moving to this recognition scheme and also moving long-term toward a goal of having K-12 engineering education standards. We believe it essential to move toward a quality assurance regime for two reasons. One, either that we're trying to avoid two outcomes. One outcome, undesirable outcome, is that students are taking what they believe to be engineering, hate it, leave the field never to come back, and what they're taking we believe is not really engineering. The second undesirable outcome is that students take what they believe to be engineering, really love it, go off to college to study it, and find out at the college level that's not what engineering is about. And so they feel like they've been tricked, and they become not only uninterested, but they become active enemies of engineering and go back and tell all their friends and colleagues not to study engineering because the real stuff at the college level isn't fun. Engineering is fun as well as being challenging. And so we need to make sure that there's truth in advertising in terms of what we offer. And so in terms of a metric, we believe that the best metric will be movement toward a quality assurance regime in pre-college engineering, and we are laying the foundation. We hope we're laying the foundation for such a movement. In terms of engaging business and industry and others in informal and out-of-school activities, we are working with a number of partners who are doing just that, and their metrics in those regards are in terms of levels and persistence of participation. For example, having whether it's college students or industry folks come in and do a so-called one and done, where they do one visit to a classroom during a school year at the pre-college level, does very little, because that doesn't provide the continuing support that builds deep understanding or deep appreciation for the subject matter. It's somebody dropped in, they said something, and then they disappeared. It is what we need is continuing consistent interaction with the students and their teachers if we are to have a real impact. And so those are the things that we look for at the pre-college level in terms of a sustained impact.
Okay, great. Thanks, Elsie, and thanks, Norman. Roger Hadcraft from Australia would like to make a comment on a question. Roger, come in. You have to unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna, and thanks, Norman, for a great presentation. I've got a whole lot of web links to follow up now. And I'm particularly interested in those standards that you've just been talking about,
Yes.
for school teachers. And I think there's some really good application here in Australia. I just wanted to come back to your definition, and I wonder if it needs one more line, which is something along the lines of "for the benefit of humanity." I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we get caught up in the technical aspects of engineering, and we forget that ultimately it's about solving human problems. And certainly in the West, that's I think discouraged women from joining the profession, because they go, it's just a bunch of blokes doing technical stuff. I want to go off and make the world a better place.
Right.
Not realizing that engineering is the profession that they can use to do that.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with what you said. I think I tried to hint at that in my when I quoted Charles Vest about the critical need to engage the social sciences and the policy domains. Engineering, you're absolutely correct, is about serving human needs, and therefore we need to understand human needs to do that effectively. So for the benefit of humanity, I will make that adjustment in all my future presentations with that slide. Your point is a critical one as well with regard to under-participating populations, whether that be women across the globe, in Australia, Aboriginal populations, in say the US and Canada, Indigenous populations, First Nations, minority groups in general, in glittering generalities, want to help their communities advance. Particularly if they are under-participating minority communities, they want to advance their communities. And many people say, well, I want to be a doctor to help people. And a doctor does great things one person at a time. But an engineer can help thousands or millions of people through judicious application of technology. And we know that students of all types, majority and minority, are increasingly concerned about this, because they are concerned about climate change, they're concerned about sustainability, they're concerned about the environment. These students now are thinking in different ways, and we need to capitalize on that and emphasize that engineering plays directly into their concerns in terms of having a large-scale impact on the quality of human life.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Thank you, Norman. A question from Claudio Ruibal. It says, project-based learning looks more attractive to show what engineering is. What is your experience of using project-based learning to teach math and physics to high school and college engineering students?
Thank you, Claudio, for the question. Project-based learning is definitely positive. Again, we have the research base that shows that. More broadly, experiential-based learning, whether project-based, problem-based. I think the broadest term is challenge-based learning. The research definitely shows that it instantiates deeper learning and conceptual understanding. So it's definitely something that I think we need to be doing more of. It runs into a little bit of a conflict with the point that I made earlier about mastery learning versus the competition or the challenge of seat time. We're still sort of bound to our quarters and semesters rather than providing all students with the time that they need through experiential or challenge-based learning to fully master the material.
Question from a comment from Manoj Kumar. Thank you, Claudio, for that question. And Manoj Kumar says, how should assessment change to adapt to this new pedagogy?
Oh my, that's a big question. Thank you for that. The challenge with authentic learning experiences is they require authentic assessment experiences, and our knowledge of how to do assessment well is woefully behind. This is an area that many people continue to struggle with. We know that many of the current assessments are inadequate, but they are what we have. And so I have seen experiments in terms of assessments built around authentic opportunities. That is, having students actually work on real world problems and talk through their problem solving process. In a research environment, this is called a protocol analysis, where you record the students as they talk through the problem, but that is very time and labor intensive. So we struggle with assessment to trade off what is quick and easy versus what is better but very time and labor intensive. And we still have not found an optimal midpoint between those two extremes. So I'm talking and not really saying anything, because that's a really hard question. It's a really important question, and it's one that a number of people continue to struggle with.
Okay, thank you. Daniel Prabhakar from India asked an interesting question. Good presentation. What's your opinion on online courses becoming more and more engineering, make more interactive? What do you think that the classroom experience will fade away?
No, so there are two responses. One is there's another joke that any professor who believes that his or her classroom experience can be replaced completely by computer probably should have their classroom replaced by a computer. The other comment, probably a little bit less mean, is that technology is enabling us to enrich and broaden classroom experiences to new venues. Working in cyberspace is allowing students to collaborate across distances of time and space. There were some early experiments within Second Life, if you remember that virtual environment, where students in different countries could collaborate around a virtual physical device, an engineering device, whether that be a circuit or an engine or a rocket motor or an airplane. Different students from different places could collaborate in analysis, design in virtual space. And so I think the classroom, by which we mean the social aspect, remains important because of the point I made before about the importance of diverse thinkers coming together and challenging each other and bringing new things to the table. And the technology with the haptic feedback, the other forms of the auditory feedback, we're now getting to the point where there is smell feedback. Some people are doing experiments with that as well, are allowing us to emulate the real world environment in virtual space. And so I think as that technology gets better, we will see more online education. We already see remote operation of laboratories. And so these things, the distinctions that we're drawing will become less significant. There is work to be done. The technology is still developing. It obviously is expensive currently, and the accessibility to it it also presents a challenge. But where the choice is technology, even at a current state, versus nothing, I think we have to vote in favor of having the technology.
Okay, thank you, Norman. Thank you, Daniel, for that question. Here's a comment and question from Pamela Norris. I like the comment that we need to nurture potential and not just demonstrate excellence. This will help us open the pipeline to more diverse students. Other ideas for changing the demographic of engineers, which differ distinctly from the general population, at least in the US. So are there approaches in other countries that might help us in this area?
Thanks, Pam, for the question. In terms of engaging non-traditional populations, and this is true across the planet, I'm not sure within any given region or country's context that anybody has really mastered that challenge. I think it's a matter of being open to others and seeing the value, excuse me, the value of the diverse perspectives and the value in terms of national social development of engaging broad components of a national population. So the direct answer to your question in terms of are there others who are doing a much better job of engaging their under-participating populations, I don't know of an exemplar anywhere on the planet. I admit I could be ignorant of one that exists, but I'm not currently aware of it. But I do think there's increasing awareness across the planet that we need to do something to make sure that we use all of the human resource talent that's available to us.
Okay, so we are at the end of the hour, so we still have a few more comments. I'm sorry I'm not able to get to them. Just for your information, Norman, we've had 110 people listening to you, and many of them have interacted and asked questions. So I'm going to take back the screen for just a minute to wind this up and do a little commercial for the for that conference that we are talking about, which is in Chennai. So just to do a little bit of that commercial, I'm going to take back the screen and take you to the website and just let's see. I'm going to go back to making me the presenter, and I'm going to show my screen, and I'm going to quickly go to the website, which I want to show you. And this is WEEF 2019, and you should be able to get to it very, very easily. If you are not still aware of that, it's WEF2019.org. So this one is particularly GSF. It's actually the Graduate Global Student Forum is actually another very important important one here. But I'm just going to go to brief itself and just make sure that we're going to.
Krishna, you may need to repeat the web address. I personally am not seeing your screen.
Yeah, I'm sharing it right now, I think. Audience view, yeah, I think it's there. Okay, WEEF2019.org. Those of you who are able to see the screen, some of you might have to hide other stuff that may be on your desktop. So this is from 13th to 16th November in Chennai, in a beautiful hotel, which is the ITC Grand Chola. There are tours available for different parts of India. This deadline for abstracts has been extended. Let's oops, I went off somewhere else. It's extended to September 30th. So we still have time to send your abstracts. There's a little comment here lately added that Chennai and water management. Those of you who are hearing about the water crisis in Chennai, they said there is no problem. We're trying to figure out how to take care of that. And there are all kinds of exciting things that are happening at this forum. There is there are some we have a lot of distinguished speakers from around the world, like Mike Lauer and Sirin Tekinai, and let's see if I can move this down. Maybe from Turkey, Loeni Morel, Lisa Looney, Professor Kannan, Bill Williams, Uriel Kukierman, Wanjang Ju, Roger Hardgraf, and Bernard Amadaya. So some exciting things going on at World Engineering Education Forum, which is being hosted at VIT Chennai. So come one, come all, and we really look forward to seeing you there. And so with that, I would like to say thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I appreciate the discussion. And I particularly want to thank you, Norman, for enlightening us on various very interesting topics and responding to to various questions. So there is
Pleasure.
a quick. Okay, great. Thank you so much, and all the best to everybody. Good morning, good night, good evening, whatever time of the day you're in. See you at the next webinar in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.